All right, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Todd Fernandez with Climate Crisis Policy, and I'll be your host today. We're in an exciting moment, a new beginning, but the obstacles are still huge. The challenge we face in building unity and a clear set of demands are huge, but the groundswell of passion and activism and determination is powerful and growing. Of course, all eyes are on Georgia, and there's a lot of organizing you can join, nonpartisan, to help rally the vote there. We'll share some links in the chat later. I think we should all see who we know in Georgia on our Facebook and LinkedIn and reach out that way. The Senate could dictate the future of everything, but regardless, our organizing plan and needs are the same. We need scientifically based legislation to stop greenhouse gas pollution on a specific timeline and a powerful unity to pass it. I believe the climate movement is big enough to bulldoze any resistance, provided we have that shared demand that inspires us all to uncommon valor and collective protest. To help generate this, as you know, we're planning a symposium, which we'll share more about today on December 9th and 10th, with 3 sessions per day, noon to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. There's an incredible team working on this, too many to mention, but I am impressed and very grateful that these exceptional people all deem this worthy of their time and effort. The lineup of presenters is already amazing. The top leaders are attending from the Climate Reality Project, Poor People's Campaign, NAACP, the Heal Food Alliance, Physicians for Social Responsibility, Climate Psychiatry Alliance, Environmental Investigation Agency, Center for Biological Diversity, Citizens Climate Lobby, Project Drawdown, Alabama Interfaith Power and Light, Hazan, Green Faith, and the DNC Climate Council. So these are the executive directors of all those entities. Invitations are in process for many more, including Senator Booker and Senator Merkley, with a team of people on those. And it looks pretty likely that Senator Booker is going to say yes. And given the team that's going after Merkley, I bet that he's going to say yes. If there are other folks in play as well. If you have contacts at any major environmental groups or Congress, please reach out, because you are the power of this network, and it's really your relationships that can make this an amazing success, both in terms of the symposium and movement building together. And I think your relationships can help us unite in common cause. So we need a little help on a few of them to get them in the boat, as you know. The purpose of the symposium is simple: to reveal the plans for 2021 and figure out how to work together. And for the grand finale, we'll have a wonderful climate cabaret hosted by Barbara Brussel, who I adore, and she sings with her soul. It's really quite beautiful. This will be a huge lift, of course, but very exciting, because to unite, we need a plan to unite. It's not just going to happen. And this is one effort toward that conversation. I hope you can all join us and help spread the word. Promotional materials will go out for that next week. And there are already over 100 folks registered, and we haven't really started promoting it. So given the co-host list, which is also quite large, and I'll post in a second, I expect this to have very broad outreach. On our internal work, things are amazing. We have an incredible core team on those calls from all over and growing. The adopted district is adding more core team leaders too. Thank you, Brenna Cohen, for joining Tara and Meryl there. As we're preparing for an influx of new groups, we hope, from the new faith meetings that we're about to have, and then the symposium publicity. Again, please adopt your district today if you've not done so yet. Folks are having remarkable meetings, creating local teams that are really a model of organizing and the foundation for the push ahead. It's never too soon to get that started, and the Climate Bill package is proving to be a fine vehicle for those initial coordinations. The faith team is also going great. Lavona Grove of Unitarian Universalist is taking point on that, and she's amazing. Faith groups all over are invited, and the symposium breakout group on this will be stellar. Our marketing team is working with Big Buzz, and the intake form that they've given us for that process is underway and will be delivered this week. The goal is to promote the solutions, big picture, in an accessible, entertaining way, and then to set the goalpost for victory against which all the incremental change can be measured. Soon we'll send out some questions to everyone to provide input into that creative process. Like, who would you target? You know, what message you think would resonate, et cetera. And the policy teams have also been amazing, as you know. Thank you all for everything you've been doing. Today we'll hear from Land, Water, and Forest first, and then electricity. EJ asked for a continuance, which has been graciously granted by the court. I'll be leaving the meeting early today to go speak at a meeting convened by Reverend Malcolm of Alabama Interfaith Power and Light and Reverend Brooks Burnt of the United Church of Christ that will have over 500 or so from across the country who I'm told are eager to learn about the adopted district. So we'll leave you in good hands with Catherine Skopik, who can facilitate the end of our meeting. It makes me nervous leaving a bunch of climate activists alone talking about policy. Play. So please play nice and don't fight over anything until I get back. I sound like my mother, I know. Remember, it's not each other we have to persuade, it's Congress. And our job really is just to unite and get informed. One other thing, the website has been updated. Thank you, Dylan and CC. The first thing is the 2020 climate bill package is now in the menu bar at the top, toward the top, and all the details are now on that one page instead of split between that page and the action campaign page as it was before. So all the information is in one place now. And the second thing is that the symposium now has a bar on the homepage and is described in the action campaigns page with registration links and the list of co-hosts and presenters. So you can pop onto that anytime if you want and look at all of those. We'll update that periodically as more join. Please note that the time and the format of the symposium may change depending on who all offers to present. So please stay tuned for final details there. And again, we welcome your help with outreach and promotion and bringing some of the bigger players into the fold. So with that, I think I'm going to stop and just take a couple questions about the symposium, if there are any. And if after that, we can move on to the sector presentations. So any couple questions, just please raise your hand if you can.
Someone asked for the URL to the chat.
Participants.
To put the URL in the chat for the climate symposium, I suppose, I mean, from John, that's from John.
It's already there. It says register for symposium up at the top. Maybe if you joined here, I'll just do it again because I know if you join.
Oh, I see, it's there, okay.
Yeah, but for people joining later, sometimes evidently the chat that happened before, they say they can't see, which is surprising to me. But I'm just gonna add it again. Any other questions? Where'd the chat go? Oh, there you are. Yeah, it's great to post them in that's a great place to put the questions. So there's the symposium registration and the Facebook event coming. And again, it's all on the website now. So just go to climatecrisispolicy.org and everything's there. Any other questions? Wonderful. I like that. That means that everyone understands what we're doing, hopefully better than we do. We'll have promotional materials going out early next week, hopefully by Wednesday, and then we'll send them out again, periodically.
A question from Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
I just wanted to know if our particular organizations want to co-sponsor or endorse, who should we contact?
Yes, please. Everyone's welcome to do that. And all you have to do is email me to have your name added to the list. My email address is climatecrisispolicy@gmail.com. And that information is on the website as well. And everyone's welcome. The list of co-hosts is quite fascinating and growing and diverse. It's lovely. Any others? All right. Oh, do you share the recordings of these calls? Yes, everything. Also on the website, you click on the bottom to our YouTube channel. All those are listed. All those, all of our videos were there. We're behind a few meetings, but they're up there. And in terms of a piece of this today's presentation about that to share, we can think about trying to get an excerpt of that cut out to look at it to make sure it sounds good. and we can ask somebody to do that. All righty. Well, and we can always answer, bounce in to answer. Well, I'll be gone, so maybe we can't. But this looks good. I think we're all right. So if you have suggestions, yes, we've already Kathy Castor is already invited, and we're working on that. If anyone has relationships with Kathy Castor, that would be great to help us. And I see those other two suggestions. We'll see. And we already have Michelle Dietrich from the DNC Climate Council coming to speak, and she's helping us round up some more elected officials. She has a list: Jay Inslee, Representative, who else did she say? Levine, I think. Anyway, I don't have those notes in front of me, but she's asking, and the other people on our team is asking. And if you have elected officials that you have a relationship with that are working on climate and you would like to invite them, by all means do, and just reach out to me if you don't have the generic invitation. It went out to the listserv, but it didn't go out to our broader lists. Great, I see Selden saying Jay Inslee would be great. Of course, it's not because he's a state leader, but rather because he's being considered for the climate czar and is helping to spearhead efforts to combine plans at the federal level. And so that's why that voice is so important. All right. I think I sent out the list of invitees on former emails. So you can always look at that and see if anyone's missing. And we do need help in Tampa. So any of you know people in Tampa, we're going to start a little bit of a press to try to get Kathy Castor here.
I know quite a few people in Tampa, and they're all already really engaged politically. So which specific thing should I connect them to? Because they're always chomping at the bits for a way to make the world a better place.
Who's that? Who's speaking?
This is Shannon Bean-Scalise from Colorado.
Oh, hi, Shannon. Wonderful. Will you email me about that, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Shannon, thank you. Yay. I'm born and raised in Tampa, Florida, so I have some contacts there. In fact, a local pastor of a local church. So we'll see how it goes. There was some initial resistance from the staff at the committee, but we're going to go around the committee and go straight to her office. There's more than one way to fry a fish or something, however that goes. All right, that's great. So again, anyone else with those kinds of contacts? Wonderful. It's only been a week since we started the invites, so we're already feeling pretty good, frankly, and which is good because at first I was a little panicked. Okay, I think next we're going to move on and then welcome the Land, Water, and Forest team. And before I go, because I'll duck out, I think probably in the middle of something, just want to thank everybody again for everything you're all doing and for coming regularly like this. We have 68 people again on the call. It's heartening to know that this is resonating and it's worthy of your time and interest. And I'm very grateful. It just keeps us going. So thank you all again for coming, and onward we go. Who's up, Greg and Christine?
So first is Landforce Water Team. This is Shannon again, and I'm with the Landforce Water Team. So hello, everybody. And we have Regina on our team says that she is in the waiting room and not allowed in yet. Is that a possibility that she's still in the waiting room?
She's not showing up in this waiting room, so maybe she's in the wrong meeting.
Okay,
That's
I did
possible.
send her the link. If that happens, I'll just cover her slides. But if she appears,
I'm here. I am here.
Oh,
great.
Because I've got the wrong name again here. It says
Oh, you-
Rachel, and it's me though.
oh, okay. You know how to rename yourself?
Pardon me?
Do you know how to rename yourself?
Yes, I do. I don't know why this happens so often.
But it's okay. As long as you're here, that's what we care about.
Mhm, yes.
So I'm going to jump in because I know everyone is tight on time and everyone has a lot to say and share. And the faster we get in, the more chance that everyone can actually present what they put together. So essentially, and Robert, do we have you here as well? I just want to make sure.
I'm here, but my video isn't working for some reason. It looks to be fine on my laptop,
Great, excellent.
but I don't see my image in the picture, and I don't seem to be able to fix it. I don't know if Greg can help.
Well, for this chance, we're just going to rely on being able to hear your voice so that you can talk through your slides. And
Okay, that'll be fine.
that'll be good. So thank you everybody for tuning in to updates from CCP generally and also for the Landforce Water Team. There was a ton of information in our pages and essentially the main feel behind it was that where there was issues of funding and putting more research on and stuff like that, there's a lot of overlap between the CCP and the House. And then in areas where they were talking about specific municipal regulations or global policy, stuff like that, there wasn't as much overlap because it really addressed stuff in the States. So kind of jumping in, what we thought would be most important, because so much of what we're talking about with climate is talking about CO2 in metric tons, and I didn't even have a concept of what that was. So this is a visual representation of what a metric ton is. You can see little people standing here. So when you think of 1 metric ton, think of a big ball like 3 times as tall as you are. And then this is an outdated image from 2012, but it still gives a really good idea of 107 million tons a day. That was our emissions in 2012. And this is a pile of those metric ton balls sitting on top of Manhattan. And it really just helps put in perspective every single day when we're talking about using our lands to sequester carbon. We're talking about sequestering a lot of carbon, piles that cover entire cities. So that's just a visual representation, thinking about historically where we came from to kind of set the stage as we jump in. The first 100 years of the Industrial Revolution, we produced about 1,000 gigatons of CO2. In the first 5 of the millennium, we did about 500. So that's a pretty dramatic increased rate of output. So as of 2015, we had about 335 in our safe release budget. The rest of this presentation is going to focus on lands where we hear from Robert, or sorry, forests where we hear from Robert, lands where we hear from Regina, and waters, which I'll take care of. And then the big thing from the House report was that, oops, let me go back, was that if maximized, our public lands have the potential to sequester up to 1/5 of net annual carbon dioxide emissions. And now that the stage is set, we'll hear from Robert.
And so what we've listed here are the topics, the main topics that are covered in our sections for the House, Senate, and Digest in the order as they're presented, descending order of importance in drawdown. And there are many other smaller sections, but this gives us an idea, and I'll proceed through the next few slides in this order. But tropical rainforests are mentioned. Of course, there's not much we can do except try to not purchase things from them. So forests play a critical role in absorbing carbon emissions. About 90% of the land sector carbon storage will be in forest area. Next. So tropical rainforests, my pictures are in the way of but anyway, this is mentioned in the House bill, and I think this is going to be a problem for me, Shannon, if I can't get these. Okay, there we go. The recommendation in the House report is to put a restriction on market commodities and make it illegal to purchase commodities or products from deforested lands in the tropics. Next. So natural forests and planted forests combined are shown here for the United States. For the lower 48, you can see that most of the lands in the West are federally owned, whereas most of the forests in the East are family owned. This is the land area that the House bill is looking to plant 4 billion trees by 2030 and 15 billion trees by 2050, which is a good plan, and this will take place on federal, private, and private land. Next. So the U.S. The Forest Service has 65 to 80 million acres of forest that could benefit from reforestation. Most of the funding that's been set aside for that in the last few years has all gone to forest fire fighting. And so very little of that has been done. The House bill is setting aside, funding to try to pick this up, and with some ambitious goals. Reforestation offers the single largest land sector pathway to carbon reductions, with the potential to store up to 140 million metric tons of carbon a year. Next. So the old growth forest is an extremely important topic. It's mentioned in the House bill and the Senate, but it needs more attention, I think, than it's getting. Even in the digest, we're losing about a football field worth of natural forest every 30 seconds to, and recently the Alaska Tunga Forest which is America's largest natural forest, largest intact temperate rainforest in the world, was opened as the Trump administration turned down or repealed the roadless rule. And so there's a great deal of attention in the House bill and in the digest that's properly stated to reinstating the roadless rule. Next. This shows planting on land that is not currently forested. I think some of the area that you see there in New Mexico and Nevada maybe is with larger companies like Weyerhaeuser, but most of the rest of what you see is done on private land. And this is land where people are taking spent croplands that's no longer producing and planting trees on it. The drawdown lists this as number 15, and it's a list of importance because beyond their usefulness in wood production and carbon sequestration, tree farms have a plantation conservation benefit. In global terms, they actually reduce logging in natural forests. Next. So peatlands and wetlands are not mentioned at all or barely mentioned in the House bill, receive a small mention but they need much more attention because this is going to be where some of the first major impacts take place when the ice cap is removed from the winter ice is removed from the Arctic. But it's all over the world. It's even in Australia, much along the west coast, east coast rather, of the United States and Alaska. Currently, the federal government does not maintain any comprehensive national database identifying mapping ocean coastal ecosystems, resulting in a lack of knowledge about where wetlands exist and the potential for restoration. So this is mentioned, I think, more there is some mention of this on coastal wetlands in the Senate bill, but it needs a lot more attention in the digest. Next. Bamboo is not mentioned at all in the digest or the House bill, but it's listed as number 35 of importance in the drawdown and needs a lot more attention. Next.
Oh, hold on. There we go.
So the Senate report emphasizes increased funding for research in private and public lands. The House also covers a great deal of this. There's a lot on in all three on moving to preserve endangered species, but this whole area needs a lot more attention. Especially one of the main emphases on this in the Senate bill is on in removing invasive species that are prone to be fire hazards after land has been exposed to wildfires, and a lot more attention needs to be given to wildfire prevention. Some of the three major hurdles are the planting on dry land is going to require a very careful tree selection and planting more spread out. The dry land is also more susceptible to insect and other disease infiltration, and is also mostly, and this all plays into the fire hazard, which is increasing on an annual basis. Next slide. So this is generally showing how the forest, we can see in the upper left there, most of the forest fires in the Western United States are not even shown until more recent years, but fires are becoming an increasing problem and need to be dealt with. Next. And it's over to you, Shannon.
Or this one's Regina. So
Oh,
Regina?
right. Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're talking about primarily public lands. And we as citizens and taxpayers, excuse me, own these lands. But public lands are really nature's solutions to our climate crisis. And why? Because they're reliable and lasting carbon sinks. They're cost effective and they're really important habitats for wild and endangered animals. And the climate crisis and the crisis of endangered species really come together. So, but the problem is the state of our public lands. And as the House report says, the condition of nature in America is rapidly declining as the country loses large swaths of natural areas to roads, urban sprawl, and other human activities. And clearly mismanagement of America's public lands and waters makes them part of the climate change problem. And in fact, if you wonder why, because of the extraction of fossil fuels on public lands and water, which accounts for approximately a quarter of all US CO2 emissions. So how do we transform our public lands? It's important to look at this and see the federally protected lands. And what we're interested in are the lands that are really taken care of by, managed by the Bureau of Land Management. That's the BLM, which is a part of the, excuse me, Department of the Interior. And you can see all of this. You can see this. This is approximately together with what is in Alaska, which is it's approximately 700 million acres. Now, 700 million acres is a lot, and of that, well, I'll get to that later. But one of the initiatives I'll mention right now, as it's on the slide, is the 30 by 30 bill, which sets the goal of 30% of land and ocean protected by 2030. So that's why it's called the 2030 bill. Okay, next slide, please. So public lands are really majestic workers and protectors. House's recommendations for what Congress needs to do. And again, the Department of the Interior, which is, and the Bureau of Land Management and fossil fuel should be handled differently. Okay, sorry. Fossil fuels should be handled differently by the BLM. All right. It's changing how public lands under the Bureau of Land Management are managed, including leasing to fossil fuels, making the Department of the Interior and the Bureau of Land Management accountable to Congress and to the proposed bills when passed into law. And to put an end to the annual billions in tax giveaways, incentives, loopholes to fossil fuel companies. And by 2040, then this is to reach net zero emissions from fossil fuel extractions on public lands and waters. That there is a bill not yet passed for this. And Congress needs to take action on the 3 million abandoned and orphaned wells scattered around the country. That's 3 million. They're dangerous to public health and to soil and must be plugged and remediated. Just to go back a little bit, oh yes, this is what they look like. I mean, you can, these are the examples, and you know, they leak a great deal of methane. They're really dangerous to our water. They're dangerous in so many different ways. But you can imagine 3 million of these around the country. They may be concentrated more in the West, but they're still, you know, they're unplugged. They're out and they're dangerous to groundwater. And it's something we really need to concentrate on. And this doesn't include, by the way, the number of hard rock or coal, mines and coal mines. There are something like 5,000 coal mines that have to be remediated, and thousands of hard rock mines as well. So that's separate, but this is, you know, this is really dangerous. And as it says, the Senate report does not talk about the responsibility of these mines at all, and the Senate does respond, but they talk actually about the government actually paying for all of this, when in fact the polluters should be paying. And there often aren't records of left of, you know, who these polluters are. So again, the taxpayers are paying for this. Now, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Okay, yeah. And I know we don't have much time. There's so much really to talk about here, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. Under the Bureau of Land Management, they are the ones who lease to fossil fuel companies. And for decades now, they have not increased the cost of land. So they are leasing land to fossil fuel companies for $2 an acre. And if they don't go at the auction, then they go down to $1.50 an acre. And what's happened is that fossil fuel is on, you know, has leased 25 million acres. And, you know, that's larger than 13, the size individually of 13 different states. Like Kentucky is over like 25, almost 26 million acres. But and you go down from there, the states. So that's a lot of land, okay? And I'm not certain if that 25 million acres includes those other acres that are, you know, that are sitting idle. In other words, the acreage that that fossil fuel companies have taken over, and this is really dangerous, is that all of that land is all of that other land is just totally unavailable for conservation, for remediation, for anything, which would be beneficial to both our climate and because of, you know, just sequestering fossil fuels, but for other purposes too, recreation, all sorts of things, and it's just off of our it's off bounds for all of us. Okay, the problem is also that that the land that these extra $1.50 and an acre are, yeah, these are, look at this, greenhouse gases on our public lands to give you an idea of what happens to land in these places, and so many unplugged ones. Can I go back to the other, can you go back please for a second to the previous? Yeah, just back here for a second, right. So the problem is then that the fossil fuel companies take these lands, and there was a study done by the Congressional Office of Budget Office, and they found that on these non-commissioned lands, non-competitive lands rather, only 3% of them were ever even used for wells for extracting fossil fuels. And often a half of the number of those that are $2 an acre are also not used, a half of that. And the problems here too are that these are 10-year-long leases. Okay, so they pay, I won't go into all the prices now, but they have these for 10 years. And then without any questions right now from the BLM, they can renew them again. They can keep renewing and renewing. And all of that, it will be stopped by legislation. So, that's why the DOI and BLM must be accountable to Congress, and the proposed bills, which we hope will go into law. I don't know if I have time to talk about it. If I do, I'll come back to it to talk about how, we know that billions go to fossil fuels annually, but we don't know all of the machinations with the tax giveaways, the incentives, and all the loopholes to fossil fuel companies. And this has been going on for over 100 years, as we know. So these are huge problems. And if there's time, I'd like to come back to those.
And Regina, I don't think there is time. We're at about 18 minutes for our presentation.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
I would definitely encourage, are there any remaining points you want to cover?
I can't, I guess. Well, I guess I'll just pass these slides on and people can see and read the rest of it. If let me see, wait, maybe I would like to say, that all of this, we haven't found any place in the reports where the military is taken into account, whether because they're also on public lands, for all of the CO2 that they emit, and that's a huge amount. And also FEMA, we hope will be changed to, instead of the Federal Emergency Management Act, we hope it will be changed to the Federal Clean Energy Management. Okay, sorry. So let's go on to let's go on to water with Shannon. Sorry.
Awesome. And here we go. So with waters, the one thing I want to emphasize from the land section too is that there was a really strong language in the Bureau of Land Management to actually rewrite their mission statement so that anything that they do as an organization has to consider the impact of climate change, and that they would not be able to release any new leases for drilling at all anywhere unless the land had been proven to be a carbon sink. So it's really strong language with legislation recommendations written in on how to enforce it. So that's super cool too in the land section. Moving on to waters, and I'm going to try to do this as fast as possible because I think we have 2 minutes left, or 1.5. Waters. So the big concepts for waters are just generally broad strokes, that they really want to get better data. Every time they start talking about public waters, the main thing they start with is, well, we don't know what we're talking about. We don't have a map for it. They really want to revise the mandates of governing organizations, just like they do want to do with the Bureau of Land Management. They also want to do with fisheries. Where there was the most overlap between the CCP digest and the House and Senate reports was they want to expand protections pretty drastically. And there's quite a few pieces of legislation that go through that. They want to expand renewables, and the other big area of overlap between the House's recommendations and the CCP was they want a lot more incentives to develop conservation and renewables, and they want a lot more funding for research generally. So I know that we already included this slide once, that currently the federal government does not maintain a comprehensive national data set. And basically that's the biggest obstacle, is there's not a nationwide federal network that the federal government can even reference when trying to make decisions about healthy or better climate change policy. There's nowhere they can go that is a unified body of information. It really depends on who has their ear and who has their attention, based on what information they get that's reliable. So there's a few acts that really help create a federally organized data set, so we at least have a chance of knowing what assets we have. Moving into talking about fisheries, this is a map of our fisheries, and essentially there's no current language in their governance that requires them to consider climate change. The House's recommendation is that they incorporate climate change in their mission statements, and that they collaborate together and show each other basically what's working and not working, and how each fishery is being affected by climate change. So using the fishery network as a way to talk about and get at climate change as well, which is super exciting. They talk about, as part of that 30 by 30 initiative, expanding our federally protected waters. Again, there were a lot of areas that were protected. Those protections got rolled back. I think that my next slide here, they want to now drill in areas that were previously protected. And so a lot of this 30 by 30 is to try to add more and more legislation to protect what we once already tried to protect, and just make it more permanent. And most importantly, really to all areas, is that currently there are no reporting requirements for the oil and gas companies. So if they're drilling on public lands or waters, they have a critical systems failure incident, they do not have to report it. The only way the public finds out about it is if a reporter is nosy enough to report on it. And so one of the big pieces, kind of to whittle it all down, is they want to require heavier reporting from oil and gas. They want to limit how much they can drill, and prevent all new seismic testing in the waters, prevent any new drilling permits, and require that public lands become part carbon sinks in order for any other new drilling permit to happen, which that would be a wonderful place to get to, where we become carbon sinks and then we're there again. Offshore winds, just really briefly, there's only one offshore wind farm in the entire United States, and we're looking at it. It's off the coast of New Jersey. Part of the issue with developing wind is that there's not even a process for issuing wind leases on open waters. So a lot of the efforts that are going on right now are to help make that a process that we can start developing our natural resources on our waters. And that was fast. I tried to make it fast, but those are the overall. So kind of looking at the whole Landforce waters thing or concept, within the House report, they have a lot of actionable recommendations that they're making, which is exciting. They're getting stalled in the House, or they're passing in the House, but then they're not actually going anywhere in Congress. So that's, or in the Senate, sorry. So that's where a lot of the focus needs to be. There's a lot of strong stuff that the House is recommending, and it's really exciting, but we just need to help push it along and have their backs and get it pushed on to the next level. And that is all from Rainforest Water. Well done. Any questions? Or would the next team like to present?
It's Catherine. Catherine seems to have been dropped out of the meeting.
Oh,
Oh, there she is. She just came back.
okay. Where is she? Oh,
And are there any questions? I know we went, I tried to go really fast just so we don't take time from other teams, but any questions briefly, or we're good to go? Cool, awesome. I'm seeing the chat. Cool, so the next team can present.
Catherine, you ready to go? You're muted. You're muted, Catherine.
Yeah, I just clicked on mute.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Catherine Skopik, and I and teammate Kelly Perry have been working on the electricity sector. And I'm very happy Kelly was able to join us, and she has been a very reliable, continuous working on her assignment. She, her husband and 2 children live in Germany, where her husband is stationed. And Kelly's been working on the Senate document and will go second. And Kelly is a very faithful and brilliant contributor to the electricity sector. Okay. Okay, so next we're going to, since there's so much as everybody's mentioned in these 3 documents, we obviously can't include everything, but we've tried to be somewhat selective. The electricity, the continued decarbonization of the electricity sector is the linchpin of any national strategy to achieve net zero emissions economy-wide by no later than 2050. Of course, I think that's late, but at least it's there. The electricity sector is the 2nd largest source of greenhouse gas in the United States economy, accounting for 27% of US emissions in 2018. The electrification of key end uses in the transportation, building, and industrial sections will be necessary. And there was a lot in all 3 of those overlapping with electricity. The federal government is the country's largest user of electricity because of its large network of buildings. Climate, let's see, are we at 100%? Let's go to 75. Okay. To have even a chance at limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoiding increasingly severe impacts from climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, concluded that global net anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions must fall by at least 45% from global 2010 levels by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. Of several given possible pathway scenarios, the world significantly lowers its energy use through enhanced energy efficiency and expedites electrification of energy. And the energy efficiency I found to be one of the largest sectors with the most, some of the most entries on the spreadsheet. Okay. I would like to show a slide that actually was from Jessica Azoulay in our recent webinar that we had. And even though this is showing from New York City from 2018, I'm showing this slide because there's some important information, I think, to our efforts. On the left here, we have all the various types of energy generation. And you see the way they go by following these colored pathways. On the right, we have residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation. And something that was somewhat new to me, if you follow the gray line, that is wasted energy. That's energy that never, ever gets used. And if you look up here at the nuclear, the broad red line, and that goes to both residential and commercial at the time, boiling water to create steam to make energy is one of the most wasteful ways of creating energy. And all of this, you can see the big wide amount that's coming from those 3 areas. So I think it's important for us to kind of keep in mind those forms of electricity generation that are not so wasteful. Okay, the overreaching house strategy. Reduce net US greenhouse gas emissions by at least 37% below 2010 levels in 2030, as in the IPCC report, and by at least 88% below in 2050. Secondly, reach net zero carbon dioxide emissions before 2050. Net zero carbon dioxide emissions are achieved, this is the definition of net zero, when the anthropogenic CO2 emissions are balanced globally by anthropogenic CO2 removals over a specified period. And it appears and has been presented so far by our speakers, our wonderful presentation, that the natural carbon sequestration for removing CO2 is the most effective. And I heard a scientist, agriculture farmer from New York State say that if the whole country practiced regenerative agriculture, we could buy 5 years. Okay, more in the overreaching house strategy. We have Pillar 1, invest in infrastructure, build a cleaner and more resilient electricity sector, enact a clean energy standard to achieve net zero emissions in the electricity sector by no later than 2040, expand tax incentives and grant programs to deploy more clean energy and efficiency technologies, invest in R&D across clean technologies, especially energy storage. Yeah, I was surprised there wasn't more on the energy storage in the House. Okay, site and construct more interstate transmission lines. This is very interesting to me because the House talked a lot about putting up these new transmission lines along the coasts, and that would enable the transmission of electricity coming from the offshore wind. You know, we're supposed to get about 900 gigawatts of electricity from offshore wind in New York State here. So as you know, there are basically 3 grid systems: the East Coast, the West Coast, like the east side of the Rockies, the west side of the Rockies, and Texas. So connecting all of these will be very effective, and I was happy to see that they're talking about putting in more transmission lines along the coast. Remove roadblocks and power markets for clean energy. Prepare the electricity grid for climate impacts and overlaps with I had to add a whole new section on the spreadsheet because of so much overlap with buildings. And then we also have overlaps with industry, set an energy efficiency resource standard, and we want to ensure more equitable access to clean energy in EJ communities. It was in there, but I think we need to have that more. Okay, this was from the House fact sheet. Okay, now here are some things that were in the digest. Yes, but the House, no. Methane digesters, cogeneration, state renewable targets. There was a little bit of indirect reference, but nothing specific, and waste to energy. There was very little on solar water, which I've always called thermal solar. I had to think, what is solar water? But thermal solar is what the term I'm used to. Concentrated solar, geothermal, wave and tidal, small hydro, and microgrids. There wasn't very much on those topics. And then what is in the House, but not the digest? I'm sorry, what is in the digest, but not the House? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm doing it the other way around. What's in the House, but not the digest? And I found I had to add a lot of these 4 new topics at the bottom of the spreadsheet. Buildings, there was a lot in the upper part of the spreadsheet, but there was a lot on reuse of buildings and materials procurement and a couple other items that relate to buildings. The second one I didn't find in the digest at all is data and telecommunication in regard to broadband and availability for all communities. The third I didn't find so much as the metropolitan communities. Now this had to do specifically with communities and metropolitan areas, building resiliency, infrastructure, a lot on water usage in communities and metropolitan. And the fourth area that I had to expand upon on the spreadsheet was transportation, because they went from cars to light and heavy trucks. They included aviation in the House, but not in the digest. And the House also included ports and ferries as well. The ports, particularly in relation to servicing the offshore wind. Biggest ideas that I found, the topics where there were the most entries were renewable or clean energy, energy efficiency, fossil fuel management, energy funding, nuclear, grid flexibility, and energy storage. Here are some concerns. I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to mention one or two. There's no definition of clean energy anywhere that I could find. And I think this is very important because sources of energy vary in the degree of cleanness. And I think it's very important that that be made clear in the House, the Senate, and the Digest. For example, nuclear is not clean. And I also found no definition for qualified dam. There wasn't too much on dams at all, but I was looking for qualified dam. Another thing in the transportation vehicles, I found more information on the mix of the gas rather than electrification of the vehicles. There was some on electrification, but there seemed to be an awful lot of emphasis on the, biofuels and all that sort of thing. And this is a tiny detail, but it really annoyed me when I read it. Notify landowners before fossil fuel companies take their land by eminent domain. My feeling is that the legislation needs to stop industry from taking land by eminent domain. So we need a halt to this practice, not notification of it. Again, that's my personal opinion more than fact. Okay, another idea that comes from a couple people I've been talking with is that perhaps we could cooperate more with countries that are successfully decreasing their greenhouse gas emissions, perhaps more successfully than we are at the moment. Potential low racial equity score of tax credits. And okay, I'm going to go on to the next one because I know Kelly has a lot of slides. And this was on the American Indians because they're a little bit of an anomaly. The American Indian lands have been mentioned in the previous presentation, but I just wanted to point out two things. Tribal nations contribute to the deployment of climate solutions using their natural resources and long-standing tenets of environmental stewardship. The National Congress of American Indians, the NCAI, outlined Indian countries' promises for addressing the climate crisis in a resolution that emphasizes the importance of economic development and tribal sovereignty as part of the transition to clean energy economy. And here's one problem that they're dealing with. There are others as well. Federal statutes like the Federal Power Act, the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act, and the Rural Electrification Act are silent on the jurisdiction of tribes over utilities, which leaves tribes subject to state regulations of these utilities, even when they operate on tribal lands. So I think there's some work that has to be done with the tribal lands and moving on to renewable energy. And now, Kelly, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, just can I know how much time we have left? Do we have a moderator?
We have till 1:30, so there's like about 25 minutes left, Kelly.
Oh, no, I think we're only supposed to be a 20-minute presentation.
Yeah, we are.
It's okay. It ran a little late, so please take your time. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you see my slides? Someone? Catherine, can you see them?
Yes, thank
yes, I
you.
can see them.
Very good.
Can you show your
so-
slides? Can you show your slides in presentation mode? That's great. Thank you.
So actually, I need to leave that for a second. I just want to, so as you know, we're all working from the spreadsheet. And so in the spreadsheet, all the page numbers have been emphasized. I didn't put them into this summary slides because we were kind of a working document. So if there's anything particular you want to dig down and see where it is in the Senate report, if you just go to our spreadsheet, that all the page numbers are located. Catherine had the page numbers in the previous part of the presentation. So this part is broken down into the new items that the Senate had that I didn't see in the digest. And then it'll talk about the overlaps with the digest and then some of the missing items from the digest. So we tried to keep it very objective and not put our opinion into this. So it's very data heavy, right, for each group to take their own personal analysis to. So the new items in the Senate, some of the overarching areas were growing solar and wind energy, energy storage, electrical vehicles, and research on new technologies, advanced biofuels, and nuclear power. Even though parts of that overlap some of the digest, I felt like the Senate was pretty clear that these were like their overall high level messages. And so the next one they go into is federal clean energy standards, emission standards, carbon pricing, and other market signals. I didn't see those present in the current version of the digest. And so the Senate really was looking for technology neutral, emission-based clean energy. This goes back to what Catherine just said about they're not really defining what that clean energy is. We can all think of lots of political reasons and also technical reasons on why they would choose that strategy. But that was really their method in the report. And they have the criteria again to get to net zero emissions no later than 2050. And once again, they're using the word net zero there. So they're not necessarily saying that we're not going to be emitting, but the net amount's going to be zero. And then Catherine had brought up, she wanted to hear the aggressive near-term goals, right? And so that they're at least saying they're going to have those, but they are not necessarily always laid out. And so reiterating that, the Senate really did want to implement a national clean emissions standard was the wording that they had used. And they had taken some of those examples that states had succeeded on. They want to restore and expand emission standards, right? Because we all know the roadblocks that have happened in the current administration. And they're really looking at strong market signals, and they're trying to be really creative and think outside the box and call on the federal government to do that. So some of the solutions that they would be thinking of, we have never even really seen in legislative form yet. They were really trying to be not only not technology specific, but they weren't even saying the direct strategy that has to be. So they're much more open-ended, trying to focus on the outcome. They did want to have these long-term planning coming though, and that really was so that current investors could be discouraged from constructing new plants that would then become stranded. And even worse than the new investments of the electricity plants being stranded was actually present a barrier to decarbonization, right? We've heard that argument before, oh, we can't turn down this plant because we haven't gotten return on investment, and ratepayers are going to have to pay the price of it. We've seen that actually happen in areas where nuclear, I'm not trying to say pro or against nuclear. I'm just saying there is examples where nuclear power plants were constructed and then for whatever reason never actually produced the power that was needed to have the return on investment, right? And so then that's been a consideration on the environmental and health factors later, when really if there had been different foresight at the beginning, maybe they could have gone down a different path. So the Senate is really taking a different strategy on trying to address some of these problems, which I think is really great for being able to have more bipartisan participation, hopefully. And so then once again, to reemphasize, this is about capital investments today will need to be designed for zero carbon fuels in the future or carbon capture technology. So they're not trying to say whether they're supportive or not of carbon capture technology. They're saying the investors need to know they need to consider these today. And then they go once again into the market strategies and talking about tax incentives and direct spending, carbon pricing mechanisms. And then I appreciated that they talked about they need to be able to protect trade and competitiveness of domestic goods. So once again, you can see the Senate is, I think, trying to get that broader support on some of these ideas. And then one of the wonderful benefits of these mechanisms is that they have a near-term revenue, which you never hear of nowadays. And they're trying to be, broad about the use of that revenue, whether it goes right back to taxpayers or we use it to accelerate the clean transition. Once again, they're using that word clean that Catherine pointed to, or address social justice issues that are going on right now. So they have a potential for really broad support on some of these issues with the way that they've used their wording. The other new topics are that the Senate, once again, it's the high level way that they worded it: affordable solar panels, energy retrofits, electric vehicles, and clean technology for all. So this goes back to Catherine with that word clean. What does it mean, right? But I really appreciated is that the Senate had called out addressing upfront costs, right? Because a landlord doesn't get that return on investment for energy efficiency, but the renter is having to pay the higher energy bill. So there's a huge disconnect there. And the Senate is really trying to go in and address that. So not only are you going to get the benefits on the climate side of things, but we're going to get that environmental justice aspect. So I really appreciated that they were including that in the electricity sector, right? Not even just in a section only related to justice. And they actually had high level numbers, a goal. This overlaps all the sectors in our report, right? 2% of GDP on climate action. So actually seeing some financial numbers kind of estimated there, I thought was really bold of the Senate plan. And then saying that 40% of that money should go back to communities. Now it's the social justice communities, but it's also the deindustrialized communities, right? So talking about that just transition for all, I think once again has that broader support. And an interesting one that they brought up was accelerating the turnover of facilities that are not going to be meeting these targets or potentially could become barriers later. And I thought that was really great to see them in front of using potentially securitization for the facilities to encourage the early retirement. And they continued on going into developing all potential options. So once again, right, we have battery storage for the short term, but they're also talking about longer term storage, which we know can get controversial. There's different types of long-term storage that some groups support and some don't. Looking at demand management, geothermal, advanced nuclear, biomass, fossil fuel generation paired with carbon capture and storage, right? They are an above all strategy, in my opinion, in the Senate report. So even though they don't have a text box saying this is what clean energy is, in the Senate report, I think if you read between the lines by them listing out these options, you can see what they're referring to as. They are considering nuclear, at least advanced nuclear, as clean, and they are considering certain long-term storage options as clean, which, there's only certain things that fit in those categories today. But they did emphasize a possibility of technical revolutions, right? So they're focusing technologies that are not yet available for cheap, widespread deployment. And so that's an interesting comment that they had in the Senate report, because now what does that say with regards to wind and solar, right? I mean, wind and solar sometimes are the fastest growing industries every year, and they're the biggest job makers sometimes. And so they may not qualify in exactly what they're targeting here in that language in the Senate report. I did appreciate that they talked about energy storage as more than batteries, as using hydrogen and other chemical forms, right? You kind of see that area neglected a lot. And that's actually a very big deal for having different infrastructures to be able to transport our electricity. If you electrify vehicles, I mean, hydrogen's a big way to get that fuel around. You can split water with your offshore wind and be able to have hydrogen. And I think someone wrote Block Island on there. Actually had someone propose to me doing hydrogen on Block Island like 10 years ago. So that was a really funny small world, all the way from Germany to see that. And then they have a huge, just transition with regards to the workers. In the electricity sector, they talked about registered apprenticeships, which you don't actually hear. You kind of hear more lip service about job training. So they were getting more into the nitty gritty of where the electric sector can help. They wanted to ensure emission reductions directly decrease pollution in individual communities. And I thought that this was very important because we have these unintended consequences that people don't always look at. And so I think that the Senate report is really trying to get down to that community level and seeing the impacts that we want, more than we're not just looking at getting CO2 down and forgetting, about the mercury exposure because this other technology is happening. So I thought that was great that they had really narrowed these down. I'm going very heavy on the new items because I'm not going to go into as much detail on the other two topics. So that way I won't, eat up everyone's time. So then the other high level for the Senate is, this is the word I was saying at the beginning, they call for a creative new paradigm of technology neutral emission focused policies. And they said, including all actors and investments in the grid. So that's from the scientists making the new technologies, the, energy producing facilities, the grid, the local municipalities, the individual homes that are creating solar. So they're really going like at the whole gamut, which I thought was really great because there's so many different ways and knobs to turn. We don't need to just focus on you know, oh, we're going to solve all this problem by having this one technology fix it, right? It's more than just technology, it's people and habits. And so I thought that was great. I actually had seen that in an overlap with transportation where they said the electrification of vehicles or autonomous driving, there's a chance that could actually increase emissions, right? If it's not done right. If you want to have it reduce emissions, you need to have probably data analysis going in to be able to say, you know, when should drivers be driving? Are we going to encourage, you know, wasteless driving with autonomous driving because people can just sit there and play on their phones for longer? So there's a lot of unintended consequences if you don't have this new paradigm shift. They went down, even overlap with the electricity sector, talking about weatherization, energy efficiency, and that clean energy technology for all. They went on the executive branch side, looking at FERC and making sure that FERC wasn't actually blocking utilities and states that may be ahead of the federal game. There's a terminology called performance-based rating, and making sure that that's related to efficiency and emission reductions, because some of these things can actually have unintended consequences where they make renewables or certain technologies more expensive, and then it's like out of alignment with the end goal, which was to reduce overall emissions. And so a couple more new items were related to energy efficiency. They had a federal efficiency standard, which wasn't in the digest. They talked about that incentive disconnect with regards to renters. For fossil fuels, they went deeper into what responsible mining and reclamation and recycling did than the digest has right now. Energy funding, they looked at having research for affordable clean generation technologies and increased electricity sector efficiencies, looking at an intermittency. So they were kind of even broader than the digest is right now, trying to probably have that bigger net to catch everything. They were supportive of cogeneration, getting heat and power from the industrial sector. As we talked about, their definition, in my opinion, of the clean technology includes nuclear, and so they emphasize the consent-based siting for nuclear waste. And so this is legislation that's been trying to go through Congress now for, I don't know, at least I think close to 10 years, where they're trying to get the communities to consent to having the site-based for the nuclear waste. And so that's kind of just, I'm guessing once again, it's trying to have that more broader support on these issues. And the last one here is create a nationwide electric grid that enables long distance transmission of renewables. And so to me, that's actually can get very controversial very fast, because it kind of, that's one of the barriers that some areas put up to technology they're not supportive of, is they use their transmission lines to do that. But if they're able to succeed on that long distance transmission, they can, you know, have significant impacts. And so the next slides, this is the overlap with the digest. And so what I did is it's very data heavy on all the inputs from the digest and when I found Senate activity on it. And so if you're familiar with the digest, these will kind of jump right out at you. I'm not going to read them in detail at all. The report will be available for you on the Google Docs. What I did want to jump to is what I saw on the Senate electricity side, where they didn't emphasize. And so under the electricity sector in the digest, there's, I think, 25 topics, and 6 of them you really couldn't see much of. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't have much on permitting siting, because there's kind of a lot of low hanging fruit there. And possibly it's covered, you know, in a different area, in a different way in the report than as an electricity thing. Maybe it's a higher level item. But there wasn't a lot in there about specifically calling out methane and hydro much either, which I was surprised. And there was very little on biomass. As Catherine said, it was more related to biofuels, which I think, once again, I think they might be just doing certain things to attract certain audiences, because my experience was, if a member, you know, has always been supportive of biofuels, even if that may or may not be the way that we're going to go in a certain direction, if you don't include what they've always been the champion of, you're not going to sign on to your package. So they could be doing a lot of things because of that. And so then here, once again, it's the nitty details from the report, ones that were listed out that I didn't find in the Senate bill, so from the digest. And so I think this is very reasonable to expect. I mean, the Tennessee Valley Authority didn't come up specifically in there. So this is just the hardcore data. They didn't have a stance on whether there should be any banning for fracking or mountaintop coal mining. I think if anything, they're saying that they would be open to it if it had carbon capture on it, from my reading of them, their definition of clean energy technology. They didn't talk about moratoriums for public lands, at least in the electricity sector on the Senate. They had different types of energy funding. These are the specific ones that I didn't see them emphasizing. And then here's some of the, once again, these are just items in the digest that I specifically couldn't find a direct overlap with in the Senate electricity report. And it's really just for each of you to go in and say, I care more about geothermal or whatever, and you can go and see it. And if you want the page numbers, you could find that in our spreadsheet. But as Catherine knows, I feel like we had a kind of a lot for two people to handle. Hopefully that gave you guys something to chew on and think about. And thank you for your time.
Yay.
Thank you.
Great
was
job. Great job, Kelly.
Yeah, great job. Thank you. This is Annie Wilson. I became delinquent for various reasons, and I really appreciate all that you've done. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, we missed you, Annie. I'm glad you were on at the beginning anyway, but thanks for all your input you did give in the beginning. Yeah. We all have a lot of responsibilities in our lives, so don't worry about it.
Okay, but I think your report is fantastic. And can I ask a general question to the attendees here with regard to these different issues that have been raised by Kelly and Catherine and our concern? These are deep concerns in policy, both with the Senate and the Congress. How will this body, this organization, then take positions as official positions or statements, or how, given these controversies, how does this body anticipate to deal with that?
Can I throw out an answer?
Todd, the question is to Todd. Yeah, go ahead.
Todd had to leave. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Todd had to leave, so I'll try to conduct this. We have about how much time? We have about 5-6 minutes left. So does anybody have a brief answer to Annie's question? Todd would be the ideal person to answer that, but I don't know. Shannon, do you want to take that, or Carol?
Well, one thing I wanted to say is that, like, kind of what Todd said at the beginning, I think the focus is unity. And so that we are absolutely all going to be on a different page about different issues, because it's not possible for us to all be on the same page without being the same person. So I think as we take positions, we're taking positions and seeking broad consensus and understanding that we push as an entity from a broad area, and we don't all have to 100% be on the same page. Just putting our energy in the same directions is going to get the kind of progress that we're looking for. It's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Shannon. And to add to that, if you think about it, what one place is there for organizations to focus on? There's no one focal point. And so with all of us coming together, just as Shannon said, agreeing on the fact that we have to do something different, because what we've been doing is not getting the job done. So by us coming together, seeing where we can work together in unity on getting these problems solved, the major problems solved. And I think in both the digest, the Senate and the House, we saw that there is an emphasis on energy efficiency. There is an emphasis on funding and a lot of the others. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but are we moving quickly enough? Do we need more of a push from everybody in the country? I mean, if everybody, no matter what organization you belong to or what your specific variances might be, that if we all worked together and put pressure on our elected officials, we might stand a better chance of accomplishing our goal.
And one thing that I wanted to talk about more in the Landforce water presentation that I cut off because we don't really have time, or didn't at the time, was a lot of the language in the Senate report that I didn't get to dive into as much. They really focused soil health, which is really exciting to see. And I didn't get into the details of what they were talking about, other than that soil health was all over that document. But I'm actually studying under a soil biologist now to work with people on how to move soils back to a biological regenerative state. And the story there too is that nobody knows, nobody has a good way to calculate how much carbon our lands can actually sequester. But the lesson that we did last week, we ran through all the way down to the bacteria, like how much carbon does a bacteria poop when it goes, how much carbon does a fungi poop when it goes out, all this stuff. And basically, the calculations that this soil biologist and her team, and by the way, she wrote the soil biology primer for the USDA, but she said if the entire planet, all of humanity mobilized tomorrow to start bringing the biology back into their soils, her team has a mathematical layout that we could reverse climate change in 3 years. Now that would require everybody on the planet being regenerative all at once and getting trained. But the fact that that's even possible is exciting. And the fact that it's all over the Senate report is exciting. So I think when we think about unity, to me, that's a place we can find it because every person on this call comes in contact with soil. So it's somewhere to start.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. That's so encouraging. So yeah, Todd has really put all this together and all of you have worked so beautifully. And the first presenters on the land, forest and water, you did a great job. There's so much information in your presentation. Todd asked me to facilitate after he left. So I think I would just like to say in closing, in addition to thank you to everyone, because there was a lot of work in going through all those documents. You did an absolutely great job.
I did see Sarah has a question.
Yeah. Oh, Catherine, I just wanted, before you leave, I want to talk for 1 second. 1 minute.
Oh, okay. I just want to say one thing and then I'll come back to you. The one thing I want to say is please continue, as Todd asked us, to make contacts with any of the major environmental groups. If you have any contacts within that group, call them, do the outreach, and the more of that you can do, the better. Shannon?
I think this was Tara that was wanting to talk for just a second because I'm one of the people that's working on coordinating people that are reaching out to their legislators. Several people have signed up already. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Friday. If there's anybody on here that's interested in talking to your legislator about the climate bill package, the climate crisis policy bill package, but you don't have experience talking to legislators and you want to have a chance to sort of workshop how to do that, this Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm having some workshops on Zoom. Email me at tara@itsallaboutmovement.com and I will register you and send you the Zoom link. I'll put it in the chat right now too. And also, if you cannot come then, but you need some more support in order to feel comfortable talking to your legislator's office, then just let me know that and I will set up some other times that work for people. So I just wanted to say that these presentations were awesome. Such a hopeful note to land on, Shannon, with with solutions that work. So
yes.
And I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat asking about where you can learn more about soil health. My favorite resource is Elaine Ingham. She's the soil biologist that wrote the soil biology primer for the USDA. She's been doing this research for 30 years and is the person who published some of the papers that actually show how biology in the soil is sequestering carbon and how they're dancing together. I'm in that course. We'll be the first certified lab in Colorado. And yeah, the goal is to get everybody engaged with their soil. So if you have soil questions, you can definitely email me, buildsoil@hugaradofarms.com, and I'll put that in our chat.
Thank you. That's so helpful. It's great to know that there are so many solutions that we can work toward together. One teeny thing, since FERC was mentioned several times in the House anyway, I just want to tell you that Ted Glick has and others have a 9-page petition to change FERC to FREC, which would be Federal Renewable Energy Commission. So there's a lot of push to get that change. So that's like another movement from the top down that I think would help us in our efforts. Thank you very much, Tara. And do you want to mention the date and time again of the Friday workshop?
It's this Friday, the 20th at noon Eastern Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is noon West Coast time, I think. And also I'm willing to put some at different times if there's people that can't make those times. So.
And everybody has your email, right?
I just put it in the chat. It's in there in the chat.
Great.
At itsallaboutmovement.com.
Thank you so much. Kelly, how's everything in Germany? Okay,
Back in lockdown.
okay,
Boy. Catherine, can I just say something before we close?
go ahead.
Hi, everyone. The presenters today, just be sure to check the chat. There was a lot of activity about comments, questions. It may be helpful if you need to make edits to your report. And kindly just forward me the final presentation so that I can post them onto the Google Doc for everyone else to view. Thank you. You did an amazing job. There was so much information that everybody covered in a personal way, which was really interesting to see from different points of view. So thank you so very much.
And Christine, who is
Thank you,
next?
Christine, for all your wonderful work.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I'm sorry, Greg. You were saying something. I didn't mean to talk over you. Greg?
That's all right. I just wanted to ask Christine, who's that? Who's up next?
So up next, we have the climate, the greenhouse gas policy group, Carbon Bills, and EJ and JT. And so we have 3 dates in December, and we're trying to get them up front in the month. So we'll be in contact in finalizing the exact dates on those. But those 2 are left. There's a little bit part 2 of materials, waste, and recycling that we're hoping will come. But we'll be working with them closely as well. So great job, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. Now remember the 9th and the 10th of December. Put it on your calendars, everybody. Save those dates. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all and be with you all. You're encouraging and inspiring. I so enjoy being with you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yes.
Oh, hello. Can someone please cut and paste the chat and send it out, because it's not possible to do it on my phone. I can only do it if I'm online on my computer. Please, thank you very much.
Who's asking?
Annie Wilson.
Annie Wilson.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can help Annie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.